This video is for a very specific kind of person, and it's the kind of video I wish I could have seen before I actually started setting goals. But in this video, we're going to talk about the 4 levels of goal setting, and if you're this very specific kind of person who is ambitious and wants to set goals and actually enjoys improving themselves, and if you're anything like me, I used to be a serial procrastinator. If that is you right now, then this video is for you, because I'm going to explain to you what the 4 levels of goal setting are, how you're probably stuck on level 1, and how to actually reach level 4, which is the most optimal place to be if you actually want to achieve goals, level up your life, improve yourself. If you've got any status symbol or really anything you want to achieve, understanding what I'm about to talk about in this video is non-negotiable. If you don't watch this video or you don't get this information from some other source, which is pretty difficult to find, you're basically not going to become successful in any difficult goal. So strap in and pay attention, because this is really important. The 4 levels of goal setting go like this. And the reason there are 4 levels is because there's different ways people set goals. Obviously, level 1 is they don't set goals at all. And I'm going to explain to you how you can actually move through these, because if you don't understand how to do that, you're basically going to stay stuck at level 1, which means you don't make any progress. So 99% of people are on the first level of goal setting, which I just call procrastination. You've probably heard a lot of people say things like, I'm thinking about it, or I'm planning on doing it, or I'm going to do this, and then they don't do it. Also in this level are people who there are also people who just don't have any desire to set goals at all. They're totally unambitious. I probably wouldn't even put them anywhere. They'd be on level 0. But level 1 is for the people who are kind of thinking about it, but they don't really do anything. That's probably you watching it now. Maybe you're on level 2, but I would say most people are just procrastinators and they don't actually do anything. The second level is the first level of you actually having a goal that you're doing stuff towards. So level 2 is what I call written. It might look something like read 9 books in January. You've actually set a goal. You're not just thinking about it. You have set the goal to do this. And that's good. That's a big step up from not doing anything, but it's only level 2 because you haven't actually done any of the things I'm about to talk about. So level 3 is what I call planned. Now, you don't just have the goal written down, but you actually have a goal and a system. A system is just, I think we've got it in... Yeah, we'll talk about systems in a few pages, but a system is essentially what allows you to achieve the goal. It's the habits, the routine, everything that you do to help you achieve a goal. If you imagine that you're at point A and achieving the goal is point B, the road between those 2 points is the system, effectively. And then the 4th level of goal setting is what I call optimized, where it's goals, system, and you've subtracted everything that doesn't actually impact your goals. You've subtracted everything that doesn't actually help you make progress towards those goals. And that doesn't mean being like a psychopath and getting rid of everything in your life that you don't need. It just means getting rid of the bad habits and things that aren't particularly productive, which is very, very important. If that's a lot of information to take in, don't worry, because I'm actually going to go through all of these and how you can make the jump to the next level from the one that you're currently on. But the bottom line of this is that becoming more successful is all about operating on a higher level. So if you're at level 1 at the moment where you're procrastinating, your mission is to move to level 2, where you actually have a goal set that you're taking action on. And if you're on level 2, for example, where you've written down a goal, but you're kind of inconsistent and you're not really doing anything, your mission is to move to level 3, where you actually have a plan, you have a schedule, you're actually doing things consistently to make progress in the goal. So there are 2 big problems that I want to address on the next 2 slides before we actually go any further, and these are the 2 problems. One is that goal setting isn't taught or even encouraged, and I think that's a terrible problem. I mean, if you think about school, is goal setting really taught? I don't think it's really taught ever. Like when I was in school, we got given these journals that had like inside the front page, there was like the SMART goal thing, which is actually pretty useful, but we were just never taught how to use it. I guess they just gave that to us and it wasn't even taught, which in my opinion is just ridiculous, because I mean, you're only spending 12 or so years in the school system. If you're going to spend your entire life being your own boss, I think learning to set and achieve goals and stay consistent in them and beat procrastination is actually probably one of the most important skills you can learn. I think it would be the 3rd most important after emotional intelligence and people skills. The ability to do good work, deep work, is so important, and it's just not taught at all. So that's what's going to cause a lot of problems for a lot of people. If you find that you're a serial procrastinator, I don't blame you. Like I used to be, and most people are, just because this stuff isn't taught. And because of the second reason, which is that you and I are both incredibly not so much, I've taken steps to avoid it, but we're both very hyperstimulated, as is everyone our age, because just by, you know, growing up with social media and video games and junk food and all this other stuff, we're so overstimulated with dopamine. And what that actually does is it makes it makes it significantly harder to actually do things that aren't immediately pleasurable, because you're so used to doing things that are easy and fun. It's actually more difficult to do the delayed gratification things that are going to make you more successful in the future and actually happier as well. So those are two really big problems that we have to deal with, and we're going to talk about them throughout this video, but I just want you to be vigilant of them. And you can take a photo of them if you want, but two big reasons why you procrastinate so much and why you have so much difficulty achieving goals is that you haven't actually learnt how to do it before. You've just, you know, tried. It's sort of like if you try to ride a bike without any teaching at all. It's going to be very difficult from the start. So don't be hard on yourself that when you write these goals down or you're thinking about these goals that you haven't actually done anything yet. Don't be angry with yourself because nobody's actually taught you how to do it before. So it's a foreign thing for you. And yeah, also be vigilant of the fact that you've been hyperstimulated your entire life, and that makes it very, very difficult to change. You can change, and you should, but just be aware of that. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to crush level 1, which is, I suspect, where most people are at. So most people are just procrastinating. They have no goals. They maybe tell themselves they're going to be doing stuff like, I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about going to the gym, I'm thinking about starting a YouTube channel, or I'll film the first video in a few days' time. Like, I hear so many people say these kinds of things. And it's very, very interesting because they don't really have the self-awareness to realize that this, unless they manually change and they actually use some discipline, this is just going to continue forever. So there are basically two reasons why people are on level 1 procrastination. Those two reasons are chronic procrastination and the instant gratification trap. So procrastination 101, if you don't know, it is in a nutshell avoiding perceived discomfort. So when you procrastinate, for example, studying, which probably, I know I definitely did that when I was in school. When you procrastinate studying, what you're actually doing is you perceive it as uncomfortable, and so you avoid it. That's what procrastination is. Nobody procrastinates on stuff they perceive as fun. Nobody procrastinates on playing, you know, video games if they enjoy that, because it's easy. There's no friction. The only things you procrastinate on are things where there is so much friction that you fail to move forward. It's so much resistance that you stop trying to do it. And so that is essentially what procrastination is. An interesting thing I will point out is people actually also, this is really weird to say, but people procrastinate on things that they actually enjoy as well. And the reason for that is in the nuance, because I've said perceived discomfort, not actual discomfort. So for example, a lot of people like me who actually enjoy reading, they will actually procrastinate on reading sometimes. Why? Because they get distracted by something else that's higher dopamine. So for example, if it happens to be a day where I get distracted watching YouTube or scrolling through shorts, which doesn't usually happen, but it does sometimes happen, I might actually procrastinate reading, even though I enjoy it, simply because that seems uncomfortable because the thing I'm doing now is so stimulating and so high dopamine, if that makes sense. So what you've got to understand in your life is that you cannot avoid discomfort. Procrastinating doesn't actually avoid discomfort, because there are two kinds. There is the pain of work, which is what you're avoiding when you're procrastinating, and there is the pain of regret, which is what happens when you never do any work and you grow up watching your life slip away, watching the better part of your life pass by, and you've done absolutely nothing productive and you don't like your life. That's the second kind of pain. So one of those things is going to happen to you no matter what. If you don't set goals and actually do the things that are potentially uncomfortable now and you procrastinate, you are only going to end up on your deathbed looking back at a wasted life. And trust me, I mean, I haven't experienced that, obviously. If you can't tell from my voice, I'm not 100 years old. But I would say trust me and trust the people who are old and have, you know, talked about their biggest regrets. That's not a life that you want to end up living. You do not want to look back on wasted time. In fact, I was actually having this conversation with my boy Charlie, who I was coaching recently, and we were talking about why people who want to start YouTube procrastinate so much. And when they finally do make their first video, they look back and they're angry at themselves because they didn't start earlier. That anger isn't actually unique to YouTube, although it's very relatable for anyone who's posted YouTube videos. That applies to everything. Whenever you do some difficult thing and you start getting into the rhythm of it, it's very, very easy to look back in anger that you didn't do that. And I don't want that for any of you. So I just want you to understand that no matter what you do, no matter what goals you choose to set or who you associate with, you cannot avoid discomfort. It is either the pain of work or the pain of regret. And the beauty of life is that it is 100% up to you. Nobody else can make that choice for you. It is 100% your choice, even if you don't think it is. So I just want you to bear that in mind. I'll also say the final thing on this is that you can do things you're not motivated to do. Because a lot of people watching this video will be like, okay, sure, I am a bit of a procrastinator because I don't really enjoy, it's pretty hard to, start going to the gym or whatever my goal is. But how do I actually do it? And the answer to that is discipline. You can do things you're not motivated to do. Just because you don't feel like doing something right now, there's nothing actually stopping you from putting down what you're doing, commanding your legs to walk over to it, and then doing that thing. Because there's a very big lie around motivation, which is that you need to have motivation to do stuff. Not true at all. In fact, you want to be motivated for your goals, right? Like if you're trying to start going to the gym, you'd love to be motivated. If I could snap my fingers and make you motivated for the next year to go to the gym, you'd probably be like, please do that, because it would be good for you, right? But what you've got to understand is that motivation it builds with momentum. And that means when you start going to the gym, when you don't want to, and you keep going consistently, over time you actually will build motivation. Yes, like there's going to be, peaks and troughs. There's going to be, weeks at a time where you don't feel like going to the gym. But if I was to draw it in a graph, right, the line would go up over time. And I can actually say that from experience, because right now, going to the gym is easy for me. I actually use it as a reward. After I finish recording this video, I'm going to go to the gym because I find it fun. Whereas someone at the beginning of their weightlifting journey is going to find it very difficult. So you just got to understand that the more you do something, your brain actually goes through a thing called neuroadaptation, where that thing stops being as difficult when you actually start to enjoy it. So just bear that in mind for procrastination. This is the most important thing. Pain of work or pain of regret, you choose. One of them is going to get you. Oh, and by the way, I choose the pain of work every time. I'm not going to choose the pain of regret. I don't care if my friends don't like what I'm doing. I don't care if my family doesn't like what I'm doing. I will never, ever, I promise you, I will never choose the pain of regret over the pain of work. If I want to do something, I'm doing it. I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm going to do it. And I think everyone should have that mindset, because if you're just going to let the pain of regret boss you around your whole life, you will pay the ultimate price for it when you look back after 10 years of drinking and not doing anything, and you just think, oh my God, what have I done for the last 10 years? When did I get so fat? Why am I, so socially awkward? Why do I have no money? Why am I not impressed with myself? Why am I unhappy? Probably shouldn't have said those things in that order. Probably should have started with the happiness first, but you get the picture, right? Don't be like that. The second thing I want to address before we go back to crush level 1 is the instant gratification trap, because this is a big one. This keeps a lot of people at level 1, and the instant gratification trap basically goes like this in a nutshell. So imagine we could score your life out of 10, right, by how good it is. 10 being like, ultimate life, you do whatever you want, complete freedom, etc. And 0 being, you're locked in a concentration camp for a crime you didn't commit. That would be a 0, right? You're probably, maybe not quite that bad, because I think you'd be a little bit more than a 3. But let's just say you're at a 3. Forget the concentration camp thing, right? Let's just say you're at a 3 out of 10. The numbers don't really matter that much. Obviously, you want to improve your life, right? You want to go up in the numbers. The problem is with instant gratification. If you don't know what instant gratification is, which I think probably everyone here does know what that is, it's basically things that are immediately pleasurable, usually bad habits like video games, junk food, scrolling, etc. The instant gratification and bad habits is actually sort of artificially raising your life. You see this a lot with people who are sort of depressed. So what they end up doing, or not even, they don't even have to be quite depressed yet. They can just be a little bit lost and not really have a goal they're working towards. They usually do a lot of bad habits, like they play a lot of video games, they go out drinking a lot, they eat a bunch of junk food. That's why usually when you see people who are very obese, they're often very sad, because when you're unhappy, you do these things to try and make yourself feel better. And the reason this is a trap is because when you do bad habits, instant gratification, to artificially raise the level of enjoyment you have in life, it actually kills your motivation, because it makes you feel a little bit better when you're doing these bad habits, right? But it completely crushes your motivation to improve as a person. And the reason for that is because when you're drinking a lot, for example, because you don't enjoy your life, that is destroying your motivation, of which you already have very little, to work on your goals. The only way to actually improve your life and slingshot forward to this 8 out of 10, for example, is with delayed gratification habits that are very, very difficult to do if you're also doing a bunch of bad habits. So I just want you to understand that a lot of people fall into this instant gratification trap where, and this could be you, in fact it probably is, where you're working a job you don't particularly like you're not a 0 out of 10 obviously, but you're working a job you don't particularly like, you're doing a bunch of things that you have, non-negotiables you don't particularly like, you don't really have a direction or a goal that you're working on, and so you just indulge in instant gratification, and this happens. The solution to this is actually the same as on the previous page, which is that you can do things you're not motivated to do. So what I want you to do, if this is you right now and you're doing a bunch of bad habits to try and make yourself feel better, I need you to remind yourself that these things, that the video games, the porn, I don't care what you're doing, I'm not going to judge you, drugs, whatever you're doing that's making you feel better, not really feel better, but it gives you a boost of dopamine. These things will never, ever actually improve your life. Nobody has ever gone from a 3 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10 because they binge drunk 4 nights a week. It's never happened, ever. Not even Ozzy Osbourne did that, all right? You can't get from a 3 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10 off drinking. Nor can you do it off video games or off junk food. The only way this green line materializes and you get to an 8 out of 10 is through delayed gratification. It's through things that perhaps aren't immediately pleasurable now, but they will be better for your future self. And in fact, they'll become pleasurable for your future self if you do that enough because of neural adaptation, which we spoke about before. It's things like the gym, journaling, reading, getting good sleep, goal setting, having a mentor, watching educational content like this. These are the things that are actually going to slingshot your life forward. So just understand that. And I also want you to understand that the future version of you looking back, because remember we talked about the pain of regret before, the future version of you looking back at this 3 out of 10 version of you who didn't do the bad things and worked very, very difficult to slingshot forward is giving you a round of applause. And I know that sometimes it's hard to realize because perhaps if you're, if a lot of your high school friends are doing this and they're just, drinking and all these other bad habits, you might actually feel a little bit lonely doing the good habits and working difficult to become a better person. But I just want you to remember that there is always going to be one person who's very, very proud of you for doing difficult things. And that's your future self, because that's the person who benefits from it. So do not neglect your future self here who's looking back at you. The worst thing you can do is disgust your future self by doing tons of bad habits and not actually doing anything. I know no one's perfect. Like there's periods of, maybe a few days or a week or maybe 2 weeks last year, just little pockets where I've done a bunch of bad habits and I've not been particularly pleased with myself. And I can forgive myself because it was only a small periods of time. But when I look back on those times, I'm not happy with myself at all. And that's why one of my New Year's resolutions was to not try and fall into less of those pockets of doing bad habits and not actually, posting YouTube videos and trying to be a better person. So I just want you to bear that in mind as well. But that's the 2 main reasons why people have no goals and no ambition. What is the solution to crushing level 1 and to actually moving to level 2? And the solution is for you to take action now. We already talked about the fact that you can do things you don't actually feel like. Now, I didn't actually feel like, if you can't tell from my voice, I'm quite tired at the moment and I'm not feeling the best right now. I'm a little bit under the weather, but I'm still making this video because I understand that I have been inconsistent posting lately. And that has to change. That was one of my resolutions. And so that changes right now, even though I don't feel like doing it. I'm taking action right now, and there's no reason why you can't either. So you've just got to understand, Jesus, there we go. You've got to understand that if you don't take action now, you are permanently stuck at level 1 in I'm thinking about it territory. You have to do something you don't actually feel like doing. It's sort of like, in order for a fire to, imagine like a campfire is your motivation, right? In order for that fire to be blazing, you have to actually light the fire first. You have to do something manually, like light it with a match and put some actual firewood in it for it to light on fire. It's not going to catch on fire on its own. As soon as you do that, then it's a lot easier because all you have to do is make sure it doesn't go out, or if it does go out, then you just have to relight it. It's taking the first step that's the most difficult part. So what I want you to do is the thing that I actually talk about in my course that I have, which you can definitely jump in. I'll talk about it more at the end. We do a thing, you can see right here, it says dream storming. I'm going to teach you a little bit about that right now because it's one of the most important things you can do if you're stuck in level 1. What I want you to do is this thing I call dream storming, which is basically you're going to grab a pen and a paper and you're going to, for maybe the first time in your life for a lot of people watching, you're actually going to be ambitious on purpose. One of your biggest problems is that you've lived your entire life automatically. You've just done the things that you feel like, you've done what you're told, etc. You've never done anything more than the bare minimum. What you're going to do now is you're going to deliberately, manually be ambitious. I want you to write about all of the things that you actually want to achieve throughout your life. What would you work on, for example, if you knew you would succeed? If you were guaranteed to succeed no matter what you did, what would you do? Because I know a lot of people watching this would be like, shit, if I was guaranteed to succeed at anything, like, of course I'd try and become an actor. Of course I'd write a book. Of course I'd do this job. Of course I'd start this charity. Of course I'd start this business. Of course I'd, do X, Y, and Z. Of course I'd study to become a doctor. These are just examples. They're by no means, an exhaustive list. There's thousands of things you might want to do if you knew you were going to succeed, and it's different for each person. But I think the biggest thing holding a lot of people back is just fear of failure and fear of ridicule. So I want you to take that off the table for a second and just think about what would you do if you knew you were going to succeed. And there's probably a lot of things flooding your brain right now. That's good. I want you to pause the video and start writing. A few other questions you can ask yourself as well are, what would you work on now if you in the future got to pick? So pretend, for example, that you don't get to pick what you're working on now. Imagine it's you from the future that's looking back and they get to pick what they did 1 year ago. Sort of like if you right now got to look back at yourself from a year ago and you got to pick what that person did. So whatever they worked on for a year, whether it was, 100 painful gym workouts, you can tell them to do that and you just get the result for it right now. What would you pick? You wouldn't pick, Netflix or watching movies, because that doesn't actually benefit you. You would pick something difficult, you would pick something that's going to pay off, and you would pick something that's actually going to make you happy. So what would the version of you 1 year from now force you to work on? Because that is a strong indicator of what you should be working on right now. If you think, for example, that the version of you in the future would look back and go, I would get my ass in the gym, I would start working out, I would get in shape. That's an indicator that that's what you should be doing, because that's one of your values. You actually want to get in good shape. And you can also ask yourself, what are you afraid to set as your goal? This kind of relates back to what I said before about how a lot of people are afraid of ridicule and they're afraid of failure and all kinds of things. I want you just to be honest with yourself, because nobody's going to see what you're writing down except for maybe me. If you want to send it to me, I've got my Instagram in the description. If you want to, DM me or whatever, I'm happy to talk to you about your goals. But nobody's actually going to see this. So I want you just to write down what are you afraid of? I'll tell you what I'm afraid of right now. I've set the goal as soon as I get a few of my affairs in order, to move to a foreign country and to try living there and just, work on this business and just crush goals. Like, that's what I want to do. And I am afraid of that a little bit, not a lot, not super afraid of that, because I've traveled a fair bit, but that scares me. That's a goal that scares me, and I can be honest with myself. And I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is they're not honest with themselves about what they're afraid of. They pretend they're not afraid of anything, and they pretend that they're not, afraid of goals that they want to achieve. And what that actually does is, because you tell yourself you're not afraid of it, you actually avoid working on that goal, because the work on that goal would make you afraid, which you've said you're not. So you've kind of like banned yourself from working on that goal by telling yourself that you're not afraid of it. I'm very honest with myself, and I tell myself when I'm afraid of stuff, and that means I'm very comfortable with working. Not very comfortable, it's still outside of my comfort zone, but I'm very confident and okay with working on goals that I'm afraid of, because I'm just honest with myself and I know that they stand no chance and that I'm going to work on them anyway, regardless of how I feel. And I think that's how everyone should be. And the final thing I will say for crushing level 1, final 2 things, are just be ruthlessly ambitious when you're journaling. Fuck humility. Don't worry about, so many people are just so worried about what everyone else thinks. If you're writing these goals down and you're writing down like, I want to become a surgeon, for example, or I want to publish a book, you're probably worrying to yourself like, oh, if someone sees this, no one's going to see it, but you're worrying like, oh, if someone saw this, they'd think I'm so arrogant. Forget about that for a second. Just write down the things that are actually authentic to you and the things that you want to achieve, and just forget what anyone else would think about it. Write down whatever you want. And then once you've done that, I want you to write down 3 to 5 goals. They don't have to be, a lot of people are just perfectionists with this. Like they spend, 2 hours trying to write down the perfect goals and they're going to change them anyway. Just write down 3 goals, 3 to 5 goals. It could be 2 if you want, could be 1, I don't care. Could be 10, I don't care. You can do that if you want. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's your goals. Just write down a few things that you want to achieve. For example, one of mine is get a 6-pack by the end of the year, which I don't actually think will be that difficult because I'm already part of the way there. But just write down a goal like that. And then as soon as you've written down those goals, congratulations, you've just crushed level 1. You're no longer a procrastinator, you've actually moved to level 2 with written goals. And that's the most difficult part of this video over, because leaving level 1 is so difficult, which is why most people are there. But once you've left level 1, you've got to level 2, it's much easier to actually make progress and move from level 2 to level 3 to level 4, etc. But before we go on, guys, I just want to let you know I've got my school community linked in the description. It's at a huge discount right now. And if you're someone who's interested in, setting goals, improving their life, getting rid of bad habits, I would love for you to join and book a call with me and we can work one-on-one together and I can help you with your goals and to actually improve your life. So definitely check that out in the description. But the next thing you need to be vigilant of when you're moving from level 2 to level 3, so you're moving from just having goals written down to actually planning around your goals and having a system that you're going to use to crush your goals, you need to actually understand what systems are. So we talked about them a little bit earlier, but systems are basically the habits that will help you achieve your goal. So for example, if you have the goal that I had, which is read 9 books by the end of January, I think, that's point B. The system might be read for 90 minutes a day, which if the books aren't too long, that would probably get you 9 books within 1 month, which is about 2 books a week, because there's about 4.5 weeks in a month. So that would get me to 9 books. That's a very simple example of a system. It could be anything from your workout plan to your YouTube posting schedule to literally anything that helps you achieve your goal. So the reason this is so important and why it's its own level of, it's the third level of the 4 levels of goal setting, is because a lot of people who set goals don't actually set a routine or any kind of plan to achieve them. What is very common is they'll write something down, like they'll write, where was it before? Let me go back a page. They'll write like get a 6-pack and they'll write, read 9 books or whatever. And then they'll just not really do anything. Like they might occasionally do something on it, but they've basically just written it down and not really committed to it. And the reason they do that is because they haven't set a system. So here is what I would recommend that you do to set a system and move from level, Jesus, I wish this laptop actually worked, and move from level 2 to level 3. What you need to do is ask yourself, what habits will get me to my goal? So for example, if you set the goal of, I just gave the reading example. If you set the goal, for example, to get a 6-pack by the end of the year, you need to ask yourself what habits are going to help you achieve that goal. Obviously, you need to train your abs, you need to diet to get leaner, etc. Just figure out what habits are going to be required for you to make progress, and then I want you to actually plan them into your schedule. So figure out how many times a week you're going to do this thing. Is it going to be a daily thing, or is it going to be once a week or a few times a week? What do you need to do to actually achieve this goal? And as soon as you start asking yourself these questions, you can open the journal again and just start writing. Write down all of your thoughts. Write down the things that you think are going to be required to achieve this goal. And you can also ask yourself, what knowledge will get me to my goal? So for a lot of goals, for example, like becoming a YouTuber, for example, you might not even know how to make a YouTube channel or how to actually post videos or how to record videos. So you might have to do a little bit of research to figure out how to do that. Spoiler alert, it's not very difficult to do, but you might just have to like Google it or whatever. So that could go in the knowledge section. But as soon as you've written down what habits will get you to your goal and what knowledge will get you to your goal, you've just moved to level 3 because you've actually set a system. As soon as you've written about that and set the habits that you're actually going to do, you've moved to level 3. And a few of the things I'd recommend you do are, let me just go to the last page real quick. This is a screenshot of the corner of a habit tracker, not the whole thing, but it's one of the things I have in my Success Blueprint course on school, where I basically make you a custom habit tracker. And you can make your own on a piece of paper if you want. You can find other videos on my channel about it, or you can just Google it. But a habit tracker is basically just a list of habits you're going to do every day. So you can see meditation is on there. It could be like, some form of exercise. It could be reading. You basically write out all the habits you're going to do and you tick them off each day that you do it, and you probably just, stick it to your desk or something. So that is extremely important for a lot of people to do, and I would recommend you implement that into your system. You can also have a schedule for each week where you plan things into your calendar and tick them off. The one very, very important thing that I haven't really mentioned is that you actually keep your goals in sight. So the big mistake I talked about earlier, a lot of people do, is they will set goals. Like they'll set this, for example, and a bunch of other things in their notebook, and then their notebook goes in their drawer and they don't see it. That's a big mistake. What you need to do once you set your goals is you need to actually always have them in your mind. And the best way to do that is to write them down and stick them to your desk. I actually forgot to put a picture in because I was going to put a picture in of my desk and I forgot to do that. So sorry guys, very sorry. But I do that. So what I'd recommend you do is you write your goals down and stick them to your desk. You can also make them the lock screen of your phone. You can put them in your iPhone notes. I would recommend taking a picture of them so you have a picture of it in your photos. There should be nowhere you can go where you can't know what your goals are. In fact, if I ask you what your 3 goals are, for example, you should be able to tell me from memory. And I think a lot of people, I'll ask them what their goals are, and even if they have them, they actually can't tell me from memory. They can only remember if they look at them, which is a little bit concerning because these are your goals. These are the things you're going to work on this year, and they should be really important. But once you've done these things, you've moved to level 3, where you've actually planned how you're going to make progress. You have goals and a system. It's time to figure out how to move to level 4. Level 4 is optimized, which just means to rewire your mentality and your lifestyle in a way that making progress in your goals is frictionless. So for a lot of people, we talked about friction in the procrastination section of the video. Friction, everyone knows what friction is. Like you rub your palms together, that's friction. When I'm talking about friction in a productivity sense, I mean that some things are just more difficult to do than others. For example, waking up at 4 a.m. in winter and going to the gym has a lot of friction. There's a lot of things making you not want to do that. It's cold, your bed is warm, you don't want to exercise, you're a bit tired, for example. That has a lot of friction compared to something like scrolling on your phone through Instagram or whatever. That's completely frictionless because you can just sit there and scroll. It's designed to be as addictive and frictionless as possible by the software developers because it's how they make money. So the key facet of the optimized stage of goal setting is that we are going to design your life in a way that doing previously difficult delayed gratification things that are going to help you make progress in your goals, we want to make those things as frictionless as possible. And I'm going to talk about how we do that. So, if I can actually get to the page, we're going to talk about essentialism. If you don't know what essentialism is, I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. So we're just going to take a look at this picture. This is an example of a low performer. That little lightning bolt weird thing is just meant to represent energy. So this person who's a low performer is putting a tiny bit of energy into like tons of different things. In fact, that's probably not enough. It should probably be like 17 or 18 different things. They're putting energy into a bunch of little things, like they're checking their phone, they've got this drama here, they're watching Netflix, etc. They're doing all these things. The high performer doesn't do that. The high performer puts all of his energy into one thing or maybe a few things and makes a lot of progress in them. So you can see the arrow is much longer. Where were we? Let me go back. The best way to sum that up is winners do less. So if I can just scroll down. There we go. Sorry, I don't know if you can see this thing. It might disappear for the recording. I'm just moving the thing because it's in the way. Winners do less. A lot of people think winners are able to fit more stuff into their schedule. They actually don't. Everyone has the same sort of block of 24-hour time each day. It's just winners do less stuff, which gives them more time for the actually important things. So this is really important to talk about because I was actually talking with one of my clients, I think a day or two ago, about this, and it's that ambitious people actually suffer from doing too much. And this is a fantastic problem to have because a lot of people suffer from, not even having ambition, which is a terrible problem to have. If your problem is that you set way too many goals and you have too many things you're trying to do, that's actually a fantastic problem to have because it means that you have the potential everyone has some potential, but it means you have a lot of potential to achieve a lot of really good things. It just means you have a problem right now of you have way too many things that you're trying to put energy into. And the reason that's a problem is because, well, one, you're not going to make much progress in all of them, but two, a thing called the progress bar, which basically means the more time you put into something, the harder it is to actually make progress into it. So for example, if you've never been to the gym before, the progress bar is very, very low. All you have to do is walk into the gym. And then as soon as you've done that, the progress bar is only a little bit higher. You just have to do some exercise like once or twice a week. When you're at the level I'm at, which has been in the gym for almost 4 years, you can't just go to the gym once a week anymore. If you don't know how getting muscle works, essentially the longer you train, the slower you gain muscle. So I can't just do that anymore. I actively have to train multiple times a week or I'm just not going to gain muscle. And that's very important because if you're doing all of these things, not only are you putting energy into a lot of different things, you might not actually achieve progress in any of them because you just haven't passed the progress bar. If I was doing one workout a week and then a tiny bit of a bunch of different things, I just wouldn't make any progress in my physique because that's not enough to actually pass the progress bar. So just bear that in mind, that is a thing that's very, very important. And if you're going to be doing a bunch of tiny things, like you're going to be learning like I understand, trust me, if you're going to be trying to learn 7 different languages at once, you're going to be very, very disappointed with the outcome because I understand, I've tried doing that, it doesn't work. I'm that kind of person that wants to do a bunch of different things. I read like 8 books on the go. It's a terrible habit I have. I mean, it's a good habit because most people don't even read, but it's a very annoying habit because then I just don't make progress in any of them and I forget stuff and that kind of thing. So just bear that in mind. Essentialism is doing less stuff and doing more of the high performer stuff. And that's what we need to bear in mind for this level 4 of optimizing. But many ambitious deferrers get stuck on level 2 because they do this thing where they write a whole list and they never actually do most of those things. So here is the solution for you, because I know if you're watching to this point in the video, you probably have tons of things you want to achieve. You might have 30 things on your goal list for this year and that's just not going to work. So here's what I recommend because it's what I do and it does work. Winners have a list of goals and they also have a bucket list. So you might have your list of 3 to 5 goals. For example, I've got the goals of 50k subs on YouTube, read the Harry Potter series in Russian, get a 6-pack, publish a book, etc. I've got a few goals, right? And then I also have a bucket list. My goal list is only like 5 or 6 things. My bucket list is probably like 50 things. The bucket list is things that didn't make the goal list. So for example, getting better at poker, for example, is on my bucket list. Now, if I was on level 2 and I had that issue of, where was it, for example, ambitious people suffer from doing too much. If I was still at that level, I would have put all of these bucket list things on my goal list. I'd have, improving at poker on my goal list. And then what would happen is I'd probably not do most of those things and I'd make very, very little progress or zero progress in the goals that are currently on my goal list, the most important things. So the reason a bucket list is so important is because it sort of scratches the itch that you might have to write down all these cool things that you want to do, but you're just not placing the same importance on them that you're placing on your goals. Somebody might be watching and thinking, well, isn't that just the same thing under a different name? Not really, because you're not actually sticking your bucket list to your desk. Your goals are the things that you're thinking about every single day and you're actually planning into your schedule. Your bucket list you're not doing that. Your bucket list is just things that you do whenever you feel like it. For example, if you've got spare time and on your bucket list is improving at poker, for example, then you might want to watch a video on poker strategy, or you might want to learn some of the outs and that kind of thing. You can do that because it's on your bucket list and you enjoy it. Bucket list is more for things that you just want to do spontaneously. Or for example, something else on my bucket list is to fly business class, for example. Obviously, you don't just do that spontaneously, you plan it in, but that's okay because it doesn't really take that much thought. You just book the flight business class and then done. So that's what I'd recommend. Just everything that you want to do that's kind of cool, that isn't important enough to be on your goals list, make a bucket list in your iPhone notes and put all of it on there. So to move from level 3 planned to level 4 optimized, here's what you need to make sure. You need to ask yourself, what goals should I remove to make progress? If you've got like 15 different goals, that's too many. I want you to ask yourself which of those goals, if you were looking back, if future you was looking back at you now from 1 year in the future, what goals would you remove? What goals would you be grateful you did? Because I tell you right now, if future me was looking back at me now, I would be very, very glad that I didn't put improving poker on my list of big goals, because it's just not important enough. Like, it's kind of cool, but it's not going to change my life, so it goes on the bucket list instead. On the other hand, a goal, for example, like 50k subs on YouTube, that is important, and if I put that on my bucket list, it's kind of a weird goal to put on your bucket list because it's pretty important, but if I did that, I would be disappointed in myself. So that's why it goes on my goal list. And you can use that same logic as well. You should also ask yourself, what habits should you remove to make progress? So at this level, you're probably, less of a degenerate. You're probably not, watching as much social media content. You're probably not playing as many video games. But no one's perfect. Like, I'm definitely not perfect. There's always bad habits that you're doing that you can cut back on or remove. So I want you to ask yourself, what is the single biggest bad habit that you're doing right now? It could be junk food, it could be scrolling, etc. And I want you to figure out a way to cut back on that. For example, do you scroll late at night when you should be going in bed? And maybe that means you need to put your phone in another room. What time of the day do you eat junk food? Can you remove it? Can you stop buying it? Can you stop putting it in the pantry, etc.? Figure out ways to put, you know how we talked about friction earlier? I want you to actually make your bad habits have friction. Just like how you used to procrastinate on, or maybe you still, sorry, just like how you procrastinate on things you should do because there's friction. I want you to find ways to make your bad habits the ones that have friction. For example, my phone, usually, unless I'm recording, is on black and white, which makes it a lot more difficult to scroll because it's less sort of dopaminergic when the colors aren't there. I also power my phone off and it's on silent, so I don't, even when it is powered on, I don't get distracted by notifications. So these little things actually add friction and they make it more difficult for me to do bad habits. So I want you to bear that in mind. And I also want you to ask yourself, what do you need to do to reach the next level of yourself? Obviously, you're about to be at level 4 of goal setting, which means optimize, but there's always a next level of you where you're a better person. So I just want you to ask yourself, what does the version of you in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, 1 year's time do that you don't do now? And I want you to take steps to become more like him or her. And remember, you don't actually need motivation right now to do stuff. Motivation follows when you start doing things that you don't particularly like. So if you are, for example, if you're not as consistent in, say you're writing a book, for example, but you're very, very inconsistent in it. I don't know anyone like that. It's definitely not me. If that's you right now, and you're very, very inconsistent in writing a book, you would tell yourself that the future version of you in 3 months' time is consistent at writing a book. And so in order for you to become that person in 3 months' time, you need to start taking steps to actually become more consistent. And maybe that means moving your book writing block in your day earlier in the day so you don't procrastinate it. Maybe it means rewarding yourself afterwards. Maybe it means writing the book, maybe not doing it in the house. Maybe you go to the park, or you go to a cafe or a library or a shopping center. You go somewhere where it's kind of more interesting and you write the book there. I don't know, it's up to you. But just keep bearing in mind these things is going to move you from level 3 to level 4, where now you haven't just planned your goals, you've actually optimized your life for them. And you've optimized your life for happiness and becoming a better person, which is incredibly important. So guys, that is, I think we've gone through everything in this video. But yeah, this was an extremely important video, so I'd appreciate if you were watching this far that you hit the subscribe button, because I know a lot of you who watch my videos aren't actually subscribed, and I'd appreciate if you did that. If you did want to reach out to me, you can 100% jump in my school community. I help everyone. I do one-on-one calls with people, and I will not single-handedly, because we'll work together, but together we'll achieve your goals, and I'll make sure that you're literally 10xing your life. I've also got Instagram if you want to message me. I respond to everyone. If you've got questions, concerns, you want advice on anything, happy to help you. But guys, that is the video. This is some of the stuff in my course. Hit the subscribe button and have a good one.